What's going on, guys? James Blonde here with MMOHuts.com, finally getting the opportunity to hop into World of Warships from Wargaming to bring you guys a first look. Now, I've been waiting a long time to check this game out. In fact, I've been waiting 2 years now after not being let into the first ever showing at E3 2013. I was like standing outside of the special little theater after the rest of the media guys came out, pretty much in tears, freaking out at how amazing this game looked in its early stages of alpha. And now is my time. It's my time to check this game out, and I cannot say that I'm disappointed so far. The game is still in closed beta, and we just got permission to show off gameplay, so with that, I'm going to give you guys the special tour. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is this game doesn't feel like any of the other Wargaming games. To me, it's actually how the other ones should feel, but most of the game is, in fact, set up very similar to the other games in terms of structure and menu and tech tree and things like that. So, in this case, you start off in a vacant port instead of a hangar, where you can take a nice look at your ships. And before we go any further, even if you don't like these style games whatsoever, this one's different, mind you, you can still really appreciate the level of detail the developers put into these ships. I mean, the 3D modeling here is just crazy. You can get a full 360-degree look at these ships, just like you can with the tanks and planes in the other games, except these ships have a boatload more detail. Literally. If you go to the tech tree here, you can look at each one of the ships. This early on in beta, they only have access to the USA and Japanese lineup completely. You've got a few options for the Royal Navy here and Russian ships. Looks like premium ships only for those guys. But the nice part is that you can preview each one of these ships from the get-go. And with the level of detail that they put into each one of these models, you can click on the various weaponry that each one of these ships has and zoom in. It'll give you a nice detailed view of that particular part of the ship, which is a really cool added touch in my opinion. So yeah, the level of detail and overall visuals in this game are super nice to say the least. So if you have a powerful rig and a decent set of headphones, you're going to absolutely love the visuals and audio quality in this game, if not everything else. They've definitely got that part down. But then again, that stuff isn't everything. So as you've already seen, the game offers the 4 different types of warships. You've got destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers. Each one of these guys have very different roles, just like the different types of tanks in World of Tanks, if you're familiar, or if you're not familiar, you can kind of relate them to basic shooter-type roles. The cruisers, which is what you start off with in the game, the Erie and the Katori, to be exact, are your versatile go-to type ships that have decent firepower and they can reload fast, which is really important. They're quick on the water and they have nice countermeasures to aircraft. So they have great anti-aircraft weapons, which is important because you're going to want to use them to protect the rest of the fleet. So early on, you're going to see mainly cruisers on the map. They work nicely defeating each other as well as seeking out destroyers because they can dodge torpedoes fairly easy in most cases. Destroyers are definitely fun to play as, especially if you like launching torpedoes. That's what they're good at. In this game, seeing a torpedo hit an enemy ship and then seeing how much damage that causes is extremely satisfying in my opinion. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The destroyers are designed to help conceal your allies mainly. They release a huge smoke screen that takes a large section of the map off of radar and visual from the enemy, giving you and a group of allied ships a chance to get away when in danger, or gives you the opportunity to attack without being seen at all, which of course is very useful, as you can imagine. Destroyers are definitely a support type role in this game. These ships are even better than cruisers at maneuverability. They can turn a lot faster, slow down, and reverse really quick to dodge incoming artillery or other torpedoes coming from other destroyers, and they do a really good job at hunting down weaker, damaged enemies. My destroyer here, the Samson, one of the first Tier 2 ships that you can research, has a top speed of 30 knots, and in this game, you really get a feel for speed differences on the water and between the different types of ships. My cruisers only do about 24 knots, and between the two, that's actually a huge difference, especially factoring the slowing of the ships as you turn, the bulkiness of the ship. The game does a really nice job handling speed and momentum, which is definitely something you have to think about in this game, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the battleship. Plus, the destroyer's torpedoes are the strongest form of weaponry in the game, whether it's their torpedoes or torpedoes from the aircraft carrier's bombing planes. Either way, if you need to get through the thick armor of a battleship, that's going to be the best way to do it. Just know that the battleship is probably going to try and bite back really hard, which is rough because the biggest drawback to the destroyer is their light armor. So needless to say, the battleships are the big boys. I've just recently unlocked the first battleship for the USA, which is the South Carolina, and I've got to say, they're pretty beast. They offer the most armor in the game, so smaller ships like cruisers and destroyers' artillery fire just pelts them like hail and raindrops. And at the other end, they've also got the beefiest guns in the game. So with that, you can critically damage destroyers and cruisers with just a couple of shots if they have the chance to. This is where you have to outmaneuver them with smaller, lighter, faster ships, because the main problem with these battleship juggernauts is their overall size, momentum, and turn rate. They need a lot of time and space to reposition themselves on the map, so this is where they are somewhat vulnerable to the destroyer's speed as well as their torpedoes. Seeing that they are big and clunky, a lot of the battleships later on have scout planes that can locate enemies from a long distance, which can also help in preventing unwanted danger coming around the corner. And of course they do have their weak spots towards the rear of the ship, but like I said, their armor is so heavy that even other battleships with impressive firepower have a really hard time dealing damage. But with that, the battleship can also make extensive armor repairs that bring back the ship's combat capability, which is basically its health, essentially. So getting through the battleship's heavy armor is definitely a task, especially since it takes a while to reload its massive batteries. But then again, that's also another reason why there is different types of ammo. You've got high explosive rounds and armor penetrating rounds. Use them wisely. So if the battleships are the tanky heavy hitters in the game, then aircraft carriers are the snipers in a sense. I haven't been able to unlock an aircraft carrier just yet in the time that I've played the game, but I can imagine that they're either the absolute hardest ships to play as or the easiest. I can't tell just yet. They have unlimited firing range due to the aircraft that they carry, and the research that you can do on them allows you to get better types of aircraft. And types of aircrafts meaning that you can control scout planes, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and standard fighter planes. Each one of these can be used to quickly change direction mid-flight and attack unsuspecting targets. So if you can use them to get through their anti-aircraft countermeasures, then you are good to go. And similar to the controls of the artillery tanks in World of Tanks, for example, the carriers have a completely different vision control setup than the other ships when it comes to commanding the planes. The best way to describe it is it's kind of like an RTS-style format where you control small groups of units and assign them to various spots on the map. So you have a little bit of micromanaging going on here with this, and at the same time you've still got to keep your carrier a long way from the danger and rely on destroyers and cruisers to help you keep and stay protected. So again, I still haven't been able to determine how difficult or easy the role of the carrier is, but I can already say that it does offer a nice variety in gameplay. Now, one thing that the game does really nicely is offer you a lot of visual control, which plays along perfectly with the movement and momentum mechanics in the game. You control the camera with the mouse, of course, and when you're viewing from the main battery position, which is kind of like sitting on the deck, you can turn and rotate automatically from each group of main batteries by either looking that direction or pressing C. You can zoom all the way out to get a nice aerial view of your ship, which is a really useful tool when navigating around other ships and between islands. And from there you can zoom in with the scroll wheel to each position to get various viewpoints, all the way down to scope view from the main batteries themselves, which also gives you some vertical height at the limit of your battery's range, so you can look over the edge of islands and see a little bit further in the distance. One really nice feature here is that once you've set a standard view for yourself, you can then right click to quickly back out to an aerial view of some sorts that you can adjust to easily become aware of your trajectory and surroundings. Although sometimes your teammates might be a little narrow viewed, if you know what I'm saying. So running into other ships or islands doesn't exactly help your ship's condition, that's for sure. And after the battle, of course, you have to help pay for the repairs of the damage that you caused to allies and vice versa.
Enemy destroyer blown up.
The movement controls are also nice. You use W, A, S, and D to move around, but instead of holding down W to throttle forward, you press W and S several times to either speed up or speed down and adjust your speed accordingly. You can also hold A and D to change course to one direction to the other, and this lets you cruise at whatever speed you choose to, which can be really helpful when in battle to help lead your artillery fire or quickly slow down and change directions to dodge torpedoes or any other object. And again, you have to deal with momentum in this, so the faster you're going, the more time it takes to slow down, especially if you're using a battleship. On that note, another nice feature that helps you plot a position is the Autopilot Mode. This gives you a large map view that works in real time, allowing you to indicate a position you want to be and set a course to that position without having to worry so much about managing your throttle and navigating around obstacles. Granted, you still have to watch out for ally ships in this case. And like I mentioned earlier, aircraft carriers have a different view when it comes to controlling the planes, and typically for main battery artillery on cruisers, destroyers, and battleships, you use either the scope gunner view or something less zoomed in. But Torpedo Fire, on the other hand, with destroyers, works a little differently as well. With Torpedo Fire, you switch to them by pressing 3, and you get an FOV which indicates the range of movement of your torpedo tubes, which is this large green FOV. The smaller FOV you see is the spread for your torpedoes, and the white telegraph area is the lead area of your target that you're trying to hit based on their current movement and speed. So you want to try to aim in this general area in order to hit that ship as it approaches that direction, if it doesn't change direction, of course. So naturally the torpedoes spread out wider and wider as they move away from the ship, but you also have 2 spread options which you can change by pressing 3 again. The tighter spread is better for close range, trying to get as many torpedoes into your target as you can. But a lot of times, honestly, it only takes 1 or 2 well-placed torpedoes to ruin a good battleship. They will mess you up completely. And if you're not careful, you can also send a set of torpedoes right into your allies, taking them out just as easy as anything else. Luckily, I've yet to misfire and hit a friendly. If you do happen to take damage that causes rudder or engine problems or something with the weapons, or causes a fire, for example, you can press R to take care of that problem, just like you can in some of the other Wargaming games, which can pretty much stop the bleeding in a sense and get you back on track. But this does have a cooldown, so if you use it, you might want to get the heck out of dodge and avoid further damage just for a little while, at least until you get that cooldown back. So right now there are 2 different game modes, co-op battle or player battle. Co-op battle is player versus bots, and player battle is your 8 versus 8 PvP match. There are a few different types of matches in terms of objectives, all of which have you destroy the crap out of the enemy team. You've either got to do that or capture the enemy base, or in an alternative mode, hold a majority of 3 points on the map. The matches are really fast-paced, and to me, a lot more forgiving than a match played in World of Tanks. And a lot of the gameplay happens at long distances, which is cool in that you have to compensate for movement and lead your targets accordingly, like I kind of mentioned earlier. And even though the game helps you along with this, it's still very satisfying to feel like you're getting good at hitting your target on the first attempt. This game's progression system works just like Wargaming's other games. Warships are based on a tier system unlocked via research points gained by using prerequisite ships along with credits earned from the battles that you've played. You also level up your overall account, which helps you access more game modes early on and gives you other features like free experience, which you can use freely to apply research into whatever ship you choose. That's actually how I got my battleship. You start to gain this once you hit account level 4. You also get daily missions at level 3, which gives you extra credits for completing things like winning a battle, causing a certain amount of damage to ships, things like that. Pretty easy, straightforward stuff. And I can say that the progression overall is fairly quick. The first match I ever played with my Chester, which is the 2-tier cruiser, I played pretty decent and earned about 330 research points. And in the lower tier range, you're looking at around the 1600 point mark for unlocking either another ship or perhaps the next tier ship. Very similar to World of Tanks and Warplanes, and of course, just like the other games, you can upgrade various components on the vessels to tweak them out a little bit more stat-wise, but at this stage, there isn't a lot that you can upgrade on each ship. So in comparison to, say, World of Tanks, you feel like you're going through maxing out the features of each one of the ships kind of quickly. But honestly, I think I'm okay with this in this case, just because the next biggest ship feels that much more powerful than the last. And likewise, the cash shop is also set up in a very similar way to the other Wargaming games. You can purchase tokens to get premium ships, more port slots for ships, and of course boosters. And seeing that the game is in closed beta, if you make a token and premium ship package purchase, it will give you instant access to the game in closed beta. So that's one way you can get in now. Overall, guys, this game is an absolute blast in my opinion, and it's actually slightly better than I anticipated it being. I anticipated it looking good, but I didn't exactly expect it to play as well as it does. And once again, the game does look fantastic. I've heard that once they get the majority of the ships in the game, they're actually going to go back and work on better detail in the ship damage. So when you hit a smokestack with a huge missile, it breaks the smokestack, causing smoke to sort of flood out uncontrolled. Stuff like that. It already looks really cool when the ship sinks, but adding more detail to that is even cooler. So the details are definitely there in the warships themselves, and the maps just add the icing on the cake, really. I, for one, am really glad to see the Lexington in the game. I've got a special place in my heart for that one, seeing that I grew up around the Corpus Christi area, and that's where that carrier currently resides. I've been on it many times, and I honestly think the developers nailed the details on it perfectly. I would absolutely suggest giving this game a shot, even if you don't like any of the other Wargaming titles. I'm not the biggest fan myself. It's a completely different and overall better experience in my opinion, and definitely worth giving a shot. It shouldn't be too much longer before the game becomes more publicly accessible. Like I said, you can purchase your way into the game if you choose to, but for now you can also pick up plenty more details about the game at the game profile at the new MMOHuts.com. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.